Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Bold, Fierce, Unstoppable. I'm your host, Zach Lyotis. And in today's podcast, we have an interesting guest that has been through the ringer of life. Let me tell you the least. When I read his book, I was just amazed at the patience and perseverance that came through in the book. So let me introduce you to Nate Rifkin. When he began his journey, he was suicidal and drank alcohol every morning to get through the day. He dropped out of college, went broke, bankrupt, and even worked on street corners waving around a sign. However, Nate learned a little known spiritual discipline that helped him transform his thoughts, emotions, financial life, and find love. He describes his journey and the transformative practice he learned in his book, The Standing Meditation. Nate, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my honor. So thank you, Zach. I'm excited for telling about the ringer I went through. The
That's
ringer.
the ringer, to say the least. Like
Yeah.
when I was reading your book, I was cheering you on at times, and then there was times I wanted to cry with you, and there's times I was just like, no, Nate, there's something better out there for you. So let's go back to college days, because that's
Yeah.
where you really got into at the beginning of the book, in college, and how you just didn't feel like you really belonged there. So let's bring it back to college. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, sure. I mean, and college was really the first time in my life where I had a lot of hope because it was new for me. I was an adult. I mean, in my mind, I was an adult. I think I still had some maturing to do, but it was like I grew up in a small town and in a pretty dysfunctional family, and I was very dysfunctional. I was really depressed. I was angry. I was awkward. So when I got to college, I'm like, okay, this is my chance. I'm around new people. They don't know me. I can start over, make a good first impression. But it was actually up till then, it became the most miserable time of my life because I was still that same awkward, depressed kid.
Mhm.
And everyone else around me, it from my perception seems like everyone else around me like instantly made friends. They instantly knew like the social scene. They were getting good grades, and in some cases that was blatantly not true. It's the whole grass is greener thing, but in some cases it was because they were just more functional, happier, more emotionally healthy people. So um, but I was miserable, and my grades were awful because I just didn't care about my studies at all. I mean, when you're depressed, it's hard to work your
Mhm.
enthusiasm up for that kind of thing, and I started thinking with the path that I want to lead in my life, which at that point it was like I wanted to be an entrepreneur of some sort. Do I really need a college degree? I was studying exercise science at the time because I was really into fitness and working out. But I'm like, I don't know. If I were to become a gym owner or a personal trainer or sell DVDs or books or courses on fitness, is anyone going to grab me and be like, hey, where's your exercise science degree?
Mhm.
Probably not. So after a year and a half, I dropped out. Um, and I said goodbye to nobody. I don't think anyone at that college knew I was even gone, um, except maybe my roommate. so and after that I was like I felt really free, but I was also kind of a little nervous because now I'm untethered. Now I have to figure out my own path. So that's when I started diving into like self-help, and studying marketing and business. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. I'm going to set goals. I'm going to visualize myself like succeeding at everything I try. And it's going to work out because I was a hard worker and I knew I could do it. So that was my college experience. It was like it's like a year and a half, and that was it. I was just done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you speak about in the book how you started to be like, you studied entrepreneurship and you took a marketing course and you belonged to a whole group, but you also spoke about how you read a lot of these self-help books, but the self-help books didn't quite help you get to where you wanted to go in your life. It was like
Yeah.
that blank canvas that just kept on becoming blank, and more pain used to show up. But you speak about also one of your mentors, Mike. You
Yeah.
have a story with Mike in the book. Let's go into that place where, the self-help books didn't help you, how you worked with Mike and what you found after that.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I had a shelf full of self-help. It actually reminds me, I never heard this term, but there's a term called shelf help where people just grab the books and they just either don't use them and put them in the shelf. But I actually did. I actually really took action on the stuff I was learning, and I never achieved a single goal I set. And I was trying, and I was like sinking deeper into credit card debt. And I had one person that I was learning from as part of a group, like in person. So it wasn't just books. I was like flying to be part of like immersive experiences where we'd study business and marketing. And this guy, Mike, he actually also taught a lot of this self-help that wasn't working for me. And I was getting really, really frustrated and jaded because I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm trying. So if all this stuff isn't working, either I'm cursed or it's all BS or both. And I kind of oscillated between all of those. Like I just didn't know what was going on. I was so lost. But I remember one day during one of our like classes, one of our trainings, this is back in like 2000, I want to say 2007, something around there. Um, Mike taught a meditation from a spiritual tradition he was studying, and the spiritual tradition is called Taoism. And I'd maybe heard the name Taoism at that point. I knew nothing about it, but as he described the meditation and these Taoist practices, I started to get really intrigued because it seemed exotic. It seems like secret. It was cool. It was like, oh, this meditation is attached to like this mystical tradition. It goes back thousands of years. And I'm like, oh, that sounds neat. It appealed to my ego, which ultimately was a good thing because it got me to try, got me interested and excited and gave me just a little bit of enough like faith that I wasn't immediately like, oh, that won't work for me. Or I've tried that already. So once I learned this meditation, which is instead of like sitting on a cushion or in a chair, is actually done in a standing position. I went home, I started practicing it. And I kind of fell backwards into inventing my own like habit building routine. Because at this point in my life, like I said, I was depressed. I was going deeper into debt, and I was now drinking alcohol every morning. I was drinking vodka and an energy drink. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll do this meditation in the morning after I like whatever, shower, brush my teeth, do my thing. I'll do the meditation. And then, well, I'll still go drink. I'll still like mosey over to the kitchen, make my drink because I'm not stopping that. And an interesting thing started to happen. I started just like a minute of it, and I'd add 5 seconds a day because it's done in a standing position with your knees unlocked. So it was actually it was like an exercise almost for me. It was like taxing my leg muscles a little bit. So I added 5 seconds a day, figuring, hey, I'll get a little bit stronger every day. And I still drank. So, but after a few weeks of this, I started to get a cool buzz from the meditation. I'm like, well, this is really neat. And I kept on adding a little bit of time, a little bit of time. And the buzz started to get better and better until one day it was almost as good as the buzz I had from drinking. I thought, that's interesting. I wonder what happened. I wonder if this will keep going. Well, the next day, or within 2 days, the buzz was as good as the alcohol. And then all the alcohol did was make me feel just weird and drunk compared to where I was. And a couple of days later after that, the alcohol actually made me feel worse. And I realized, oh, the alcohol is bringing me only up so high in terms of like how good I feel. The meditation surpassed that. So the alcohol is just doing the same old thing, but instead of pulling me up, now it's dragging me down. So I actually stopped drinking in the morning. And this is just like my story. Like, I'm not saying, hey, meditation gets rid of any cravings for alcohol, but that's what happened to me. And I never touched that bottle of vodka again until I actually moved out of my condo, and it was just to pour it down the sink. So I got really, really intrigued by this. And I started thinking, all the other self-help didn't really work for me. I don't know what was missing, but it didn't work. This is working. So I started getting more and more, as I like to put it, healthily obsessed with it, because I didn't have anything going right in my life. I didn't have any friends. I couldn't get a date to save my life, and I was going deeper into debt, and I had hated myself. But this meditation is making me feel good. So I kept going with it. And people started to notice that I was changing, and they didn't know I was doing this. So I immediately flagged that, and I'm just like, okay, this is more than just something in my head. There's a real truth to what's going on here. So I started to get emotionally healthier. My thoughts stopped looping and looping on these like self-hating thoughts, and my inner life started to turn around. My outer life was still a bit of a train wreck, but my inner life was starting to turn around there.
Yeah. Let's talk about that train wreck, because this is
Yeah.
the part in the book where, like I said, I was cheering you on. I
Yeah.
was crying with you. I was going, no, Nate, get out of that job. So let's talk
Yeah.
about sign spinning, because I've honked my horn at sign spinners before. And I thought it was
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like just to be kind of funny about it. But I didn't realize it happens all the time. So let's talk about sign spinning in that as your first job out of college, I believe it was in Colorado.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly where it was. Yeah. Sign spinning revealed. All right. So yeah, as you mentioned, at this point, I moved to Colorado, um, and I'm 20, let's say 25, going on 26. I'm going to talk about that time in my life. Um, I didn't quite realize it at the time, but what was happening was I was kind of going on a spiritual journey,
Mhm.
and because I was finally tapping into like the energy of my body. All previous to that, I was focused on my mind and my looping thoughts and trying to change my thoughts, or trying to like whatever, not think, I don't know. But with meditation, I was actually tapping into something deeper. So what started to happen was life started to shift for me, and it happened in very sudden ways. I had a business partnership that just fell apart. I
Mhm.
woke up one morning and they changed the passwords on some of our online software. That's how I figured out the relationship fell apart. It was like the biz relationship of getting divorce papers mailed to you or something like that.
Mhm.
Not quite that extreme, but it was the same kind of vibe.
Same
So
feeling, right? Is it same
yeah,
feeling?
just like right in the gut, right there.
Mhm.
And I started to think, oh no, oh no. I like all my income is drying up. Like I'm not just in debt. Like my credit cards are maxed. Like this is it. I kept on trying to scramble my way out of this, but I'm finally at that breaking point. So I need to get a job. And I dropped out of college. I had marketing skill sets, but I still didn't quite have that self image where I realized what a valuable like skill set I had. So but I did have enough presence of mind to think to myself, I still want to be an entrepreneur somehow. I still want to make a go of this self-employed thing, or somehow like this. So I'm not going to go back to school for 4 years to get like some degree in some field I'm not passionate about. I just need to pay my rent, pay for food, get in, get out, and still work on my own stuff. So I hop on Craigslist and I look in the general labor section. I actually found a gig, spin a sign. I'm like, okay, 40 hours a week. Okay, yeah. Listen to music all day. Sold. I'm like, I'm in, because I could listen to audiobooks.
Mhm.
So I go to the interview, and I showed up and I was breathing and somewhat lucid, so they hired me. And I started that. It was a Sunday. It was actually my first shift, as I recall, and it was beautiful. In my mind, silly me, I'm thinking, okay, I'll do this for 3 months and I'll get back on track. I'll start a new business or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to happen real quick. No, I ended up at that job actually for more than a couple of years. Um, and I still meditated every day. And I realized what was going on was, on the outside, it might have looked like my life was just in the toilet. Anyone who like I would imagine that, like if someone knew me from high school and like drove by me, they'd be like, "Oh man, Nate, what happened? What happened, dude?" Because I'm in my mid-20s. I should be graduating or have graduated college, maybe establishing a career. I mean, these are the thoughts I used to think. But when I used to, before I meditate, I think those thoughts and I feel awful about myself. Now I was like, I had more perspective. I didn't care. It's like, it's okay. What matters is how happy was I? And I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. So I'd get up every morning and I'd drive to work, and it would just be me out there all alone. Like I'd walk in, put on a costume, grab a sign, and stand on the street corner. And I'd pop in an audiobook. The first one I listened to was like the Steve Jobs biography. Um, and I'd wave my sign, and I'm like, this is great. because for the first time in my life, I'm finally taking care of myself financially. I moved into the cheapest condo I could find. I stopped all like spending other than gas for my car, food and rent. There's like a several year gap. I have no idea what's on. I don't know what was on TV. I don't know what movies came out. I literally have no idea, because I just stopped spending any money on that. So it was like I was, again, I'll go back to the fact that I was on a spiritual journey, but I didn't realize it because my life shrank down to being so simple that I could it was like relearning to be an adult again. I
Mhm.
had a supervisor that told me which day to clean the toilets, which day to squeegee the windows. And my response to that was like, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, if it was a guy, but usually it wasn't. Um, and I was humbled because I used to be so arrogant. So it was like that old spiritual cliche about the person has to do these menial chores all day and chop wood and carry water. I was doing that, except I was spinning a sign instead of chopping wood.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how I started to learn to be able to relate to people better and not be so awkward. It was like life was still challenging me, but it was challenging me in this really like healthy way that I could actually live up to and grow from.
Yeah. And that's what when I was reading your book, that's what I noticed is that you kept on playing these audiobooks while you were spinning the sign, doing what you were doing. You were in your thoughts. You didn't allow thoughts to you worked with your thoughts. You talked to your thoughts. There was good thoughts. There was bad thoughts. There's all sorts of thoughts. But even in your book, where you talked about my external world is really not a reflection of my internal world because the meditation has truly helped me. But there's also times where I think that you spoke about at the beginning, I guess, when you were first taught the meditation, you weren't really on that path right away. Like it was on and off, on and off, on and off until it really got to you. And that's one thing that a lot of people need to realize, that we could go on this journey, but sometimes we get kicked off the journey or the path. But it's up to us to bring us back onto that path. So for everyone that's going through something, then that they're off the path, and not veering to come back on the path anytime soon, what would you tell that individual, because you've been on that journey for a while at the beginning there?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's exactly what it was like for me. I would say a couple things. Number one is that honestly, you are always on that path. And I mean that in a really, really good way. And actually, very recently, one of my teachers today was telling me and his other students, you're not falling behind
Mhm.
and you're not ahead. You're exactly where you need to be. Um, Now I know it could be hard to believe that because we're like, no, I don't like where I'm at. But the idea is that you don't have to whip yourself and be like, oh, I fell off. You're being steered through life in the perfect way for your growth and your development. And you're going to look back in a few years, as long as you keep hopping back on and realize, oh, that actually, even that slip up was actually not a slip up. It really actually helped me because now I can turn around and help someone else with the lesson. So that's one thing I'd say. But on a practical level, yeah, I mean, especially whenever anyone gets started on a spiritual walk or doing a meditative practice or any kind of work on themselves, yeah, it's tough. I mean, and it's toughest at the beginning because it's like riding a bike. You haven't gotten that momentum yet. You're still wobbly. So the challenge is it's the easiest to fall off the wagon.
Mhm.
Um, and it's also the most crucial time to stay on because that's when you're building that habit. So on a practical level, I would really advise to do what I like fell into discovering back when I first started the meditation, which is have a daily discipline. But it's not about, I'm going to do this for an hour or I'm even going to do this for half an hour. I started with 60 seconds.
Mhm.
Now, if you stay at 60 seconds, is that necessarily going to change your life? Maybe not. Well, maybe it will.
Mhm.
But staying at 60 seconds day after day after day will change your life because once that's ingrained, your brain doesn't care about the amount of time. Your brain is watching for the daily practice. And once you do that for enough days, and everyone's different for how many that is. I mean, there's research saying 60
Mhm.
days, this amount of days, but I think everyone's different.
Yeah.
But once you get there, then you can start adding on to that. And what works best for me was choosing like a slot in my schedule for the new habit. It wasn't based on like time. It wasn't like at 8:35 I'm going to do this. It was like, okay, after I do this, which for me was brush my teeth, I'm going to do this. And right before this, which in that my case was drinking. It wasn't even healthy, but it worked. So someone like, all right, I'm going to meditate. When? Okay, when I shut down my computer from work, that's when, for the day. Okay, great. So now you're tacking on something to your routine, and then from there, it becomes your routine, and that's when you can really maintain your consistency much more easily.
Yeah, I like that you say that, because it really is about self-discipline at that same time. So the self-discipline and that focus. And that's what I noticed in your book. You were working on your discipline and creating new patterns and belief systems within yourself, because you felt like the guy that didn't have friends, the guy that couldn't get a girl, the guy that, like, all the stuff that, we put ourselves in that space of limited beliefs. But you created this discipline and this focus of knowing what you wanted to do, because you always spoke about marketing and entrepreneurship in your book. That's one thing that you always said from the beginning, is I want to start my own business. So in your sign spinning job that you had, something just all of a sudden changed one day, and you're
Oh,
invited into the office and
yeah.
given another job. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. And it was a shaky transition. A lot of times in life, we are changing, but it's on such a deep level that we may not be aware of it. So I'm spinning the sign day after day, cars driving by, getting, people yelling at me, flipping me off, um, and stuff like that. And I started to think, wait a minute, I do know a thing or two about marketing and all my adventures. I bet I could help this business. It was a chain of retail stores locally. There was at their biggest, there's 10 of them in the Denver area. And I was just like, how do I do this? The first thing I did was I approached the person who did the marketing for the business, and I mentioned, hey, I have a background in marketing. She was like, oh yeah, you can send me your resume. So okay, I have to make a resume now. I never did that. So I sent it to her, and of course, never heard back. And I realized years later, I figured out, it's like, oh yeah, well, of course she didn't care. I mean, I was basically in so many words saying, hey, let me replace you, which, I mean, no one's going to want that. So I got smart, and like several months later at the company, like end of the year party, I approached the owner, not the marketing person, the owner of the business, who at that point was like 4 beers in. So I'm like, I got a shot. And I said, yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I probably was the worst, like, schmoozer salesperson ever, but I basically said, hey, maybe I could help with the market. I got some ideas, and I mean, you don't even have to hire me. Maybe I could just try something out, and if it works out, then we could talk. And he's like, all right, fine, write me a proposal. So I did, emailed him, and again, never heard back. But this time I was smart. This time I'm like, hey, you know what? Forget about it. I sent it. Maybe I'll follow up at some point, but let me just not mentally dwell on it. And I honestly did forget about it. There's one time when I saw him and I asked about it. He was on the phone. He's like, no, I'm on, I'll get back to you. I'm like, okay. I didn't want to upset the guy. And one day when I had totally forgotten about it, he actually emailed me and said, hey, come down to the office. Let's talk about this. So I'm all excited. So I remember the day when we set the appointment. I'm like, all right. It was a day where it's assigned where I was spinning, but he's like, after lunch, just come on over. Don't worry about the rest of your shift. So I'm like, okay. I get all excited, and I get in my car, and I put on like a nicer shirt, and I started driving up I-25 north toward Denver from I forget where, but it was north. And it's pretty, the traffic is going, but it's crowded. And I look over, and I'm totally rubbernecking this accident because people pulled over because they rear-ended someone. I look back ahead of me, and the car ahead of me, its bumper is just like zooming toward me way too quick. I'm like, oh no. I slam on the brakes, and I start to slow down, but I bash right into him. Hood crumples up. The coolant fluid is already starting to leak. And I'm just like, like, is this really happening? Yeah, it was really happening. I'd never been in an accident before. So I pulled over, and then my car just like dies. And so did my last hope of attending that meeting. And that's and I describe all this because people, when they hear stuff, or not when they hear stuff, but when they go through things like this, you might start to think, am I cursed? Am I like not meant to like get this one break that I wanted? Well, I wasn't cursed. And it was more that I was overexcited and I let that start to rattle my perceptions. If I were a bit more chilled out, I would have, and I was trying to rush everything. I mean, literally, I'm rushing down the street. So, and I even made the same mistake again, because once I got my car back from the mechanic, I'm like trying to get back to this meeting. I told the boss, okay, yeah, I could be there Tuesday, because I was going to get my car Tuesday. And a little voice in my head was just like, you might want to wait till Wednesday. See, what difference does a day make? And I'm like, no. I want to go. I want to go. Well, the mechanic was like way late delivering my car. I'm freaking out. And right when I finally get my car, the owner calls and it's just like, I'm too busy. I can't meet today. So it's like all this stress for nothing. And again, am I cursed? Well, no, I did finally make it. When I pulled into the parking lot at the office, I was like stumbling around, like, did I actually make it? Am I here? I even drove up that same I-25 north, like right by where I crashed my car. I'm like, don't look, this is so weird. It's like I was like reliving it. But I finally made it, and I did get the promotion. And the funny part was, I went from sign spinner to working in a cubicle with like overnight. And as the days went by, I'll tell you, I actually grew a little bit less happy, because I missed being outside. And it was so funny because I like dreamed about it and craved this, but here I was staring down a computer screen, and the work just what, and the people I was surrounded by weren't that happy either. It really infected me. So um, it was a great lesson in how to handle yourself when you are on the verge of success, and how to handle yourself after you achieve it, because it's not always it's never what you think it is, because you can only dream about it, and it's always going to be different when you're actually there feeling it.
Isn't that the truth? Absolutely. I know that was when I was reading about your so-called misfortunes, I'm going to call it that, because the accident showed up, then your car got into the auto mechanic and he was late, and then you got canceled, and the next day you ended up going. But I kept on saying to myself, everything happens in divine timings. Don't rush yourself. Don't rush yourself. And that was a huge lesson for me, because I'm that person too. Like, okay, I gotta go now. I gotta do this. I gotta. And I've always been this, all of a sudden, like I became lackadaisy for many years. And I noticed that everything happens in perfect timing.
Yeah.
Like I noticed that, you know what, if I'm 5 minutes late, I could guarantee the other person's going to be 5 minutes late. If
Exactly.
I'm, if I'm going to run to go to the mall, I'm not going to leave at this time. Something's telling me to leave at this time. I'm going to get a parking spot right at that front door. So when you were going through all those lessons of getting to your meeting, I was like, yep, that's why that part of my life has changed. If things don't work out, they don't work out. If appointments don't happen, they don't happen. Everything happens in divine timing. And at the end of the day, I don't have control over it. I have control over only what my actions, reactions, and what I do, and how I deal with things. So when I read that part, I was like, yep, that's interesting. So
that's
you
really
went,
cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like I really enjoyed the book on so many levels. So here you are now. Now you got your job in marketing, and you still were sign spinning though.
Yeah, because what happened was, it wasn't, as I said, the store only had 10 locations. So what ended up going on was that I could get all my work done like in half the time. So, and the owner, the business was shrinking, not necessarily because of me, which is a good lesson. It's like the lesson I need to learn there was you can't market your way out of all problems. And the store was a store that bought gold and silver, and at that point, the value of gold was sinking. Yeah. So people just didn't care about selling their gold anymore. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't trendy. So and the owner had expanded way too quickly. So he was closing stores. So, and he wanted to save money. So he's like, Nate, look, you could do your marketing for like half the day, but the other half go out and sign spin, because you don't have that much of a workload. And I was like, that's legit. Okay. So as the business sort of slowly dwindled, I spent like half my time in the office, half my time spinning signs, and I was actually probably more excited about the sign spinning at that point. And yeah, it is super interesting once you like are not forced into something, not all the time, but it's interesting how often like you start to actually change your feelings about it. It's like, this actually wasn't so bad, this is kind of cool. That's how I felt about sign spinning. And eventually, as the business really dwindled, I actually spent a lot of my time physically closing stores, like hauling out the furniture, renting the U-Haul, and making sure nothing was left in there, and then transporting all the office stuff into like the central location, which is it was tough emotionally because I'm watching the environment that was supporting me slowly die, and I was assisting in that process. And it was tough just because moving sucks. So I was like moving every few days. And it was scary. It was very, very scary because I realized once this business goes, I was kind of in denial about it, but I realized once this business goes, I'm right back to where I started.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, in a way, I was, because right after the business closed, I hopped right on Craigslist again. So I was right back where I started, and I started like doing the same kind of, all right, job hunt. I even tried looking for another sign spinning job, but I couldn't find anything full time.
Is
Yeah.
that when you found the truck loading? Was that right after that? Okay. But
Yeah.
before we get into the truck loading, let's talk about what Taoism is,
Sure.
because you still did the standing meditation, even though you're in truck loading. And I believe the standing meditation got you through the truck loading situation.
Yeah, me too.
So let's talk about Taoism. What is Taoism?
Yeah. So Taoism is a spiritual tradition that goes back thousands of years. It started, the theory is it started in what today we know as Siberia, where shamans would practice this, and then they eventually migrated their way down to China. And that's where it proliferated. So in the Taoist spiritual tradition, one of the central tenets is seeking harmony through balance. And this is balance in all things: balance in your health, balance in your career, balance in your community, and balance with your environment. And especially, how do we relate to our environments to achieve maximum health and increase our perceptions and walk a spiritual path, so that we can evolve personally and help others evolve. um, the more down to earth explanation I like to use is the character Yoda in Star Wars. Yoda was a Taoist. Like, whoever helped write that character was absolutely very familiar with Taoism, and basically wrote Yoda as an iconic character. So the idea of living in a simple little hut, yet having the discipline to keep working with the energy, the force of the universe, and teaching others, and having this like really cute, no nonsense teaching attitude, beating students with a stick. That all comes from the Taoist tradition. And not only is there a philosophy to Taoism, there's also a very practical side to it. And that's what I learned with my meditative practice. Um, so as I was going through this journey, I wasn't just like bopping around life, like getting like hit and jostled and smacked with like what life was throwing at me. I had a central practice that I did every day that was like a foundation for me. I mean, at times it kind of felt like something I was clinging to, because it was the only thing that I felt like wasn't like an earthquake in my life. It was like the one solid pillar. And the beauty was, even if everything else around me was going wrong, this one discipline that was making me feel better about myself was actually allowing me to get through every challenge and learn and grow and be able to leave that challenge behind. And yeah, face something new, but also face something where my life was gradually getting better. And that's why, like, even when I started loading trucks and all that, I was terrified, but I was still able to hang on, and I was still able to grow and eventually get out of that, because of my dedication to the Taoist spiritual practice. And Taoism is what resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key for everyone out there is to just find the spiritual practice that resonates with you, and then just latch onto it with everything you've got, because that thing will be the 911 call you can make that will get you through your worst challenges.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. It's not a one size fits all. This is spirituality. Everyone thinks it might be a one size fits all, but it really isn't. Like, I might take a little bit from Taoism. I might take a little bit from Christianity. I might take a little from Buddhism. It all just depends what fits within you at the end of the day, and what really resonates with you in keeping that habit continuously growing. Because the more that you continue that habit is when you start recognizing more chi. Let's talk about chi. You have a big chapter about chi in the books. Let's talk about that. It's really important.
Definitely. Oh, I gotta squeeze in one more thing though. It's great that you mentioned Buddhism and Taoism. This might upset a lot of fundamentalists out there, but I mean, for thousands of years, these people were trading secrets with each other.
Absolutely.
And then taking credit.
Yeah,
that's what they do. So,
I believe that, because every sort of practice has it's a copycat. I always say it's copycat written in different forms and formalities, and how people actually just retain that information. It's just like Christianity, just like religion. If you think of it, Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Ganesh all have that same message. They're just coming in a different form and saying it differently. So that's why when you grasp something, it's just a matter of grasping what energetically feels right to you. And that's why at the end of the day, it's all just a copycat, just with different words. That's the way I look at it.
Oh, that's cool. And actually it's perfect, because this segues perfectly into the concept of chi, because if you look at every spiritual tradition, when it comes to like energetic anatomy and the processes, it's like different words, but the same. They saw the same things, and they were experiencing the same things. So in Taoism, they have a concept that they use the word chi, which could be loosely translated as like energy or life force. Again, Star Wars, the Force. In Hinduism, I think it's prana, and other traditions I'm just not familiar with, because I primarily study Taoism. So, but what is it? When I first heard the concept, I'm like, well, that's quaint. I mean, that's something that they invented to explain away the pleasant sensations we feel when we meditate, or it's an explanation that before we discovered, I don't know, like magnetism or use microscopes, blah 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 blah. Well, ultimately, I learned I was actually incorrect about that. And there actually is a growing body of scientific evidence showing that there is this subtle energy, Taoists call chi, and it has to do with the channels that flow through our body, which are being mapped out. So the Taoists had meridians, acupuncture, that comes from Taoism. So Chinese medicine like that comes from Taoism. And they map out these meridians from thousands of years ago. And if you ever gotten like the little needles stuck in you, or if you've heard of that, they're sticking needles into the channels where chi runs through. And it turns out there's evidence indicating that these channels run through our fascia, which is a tissue in our bodies that holds our organs together. And previously, scientists were just like, oh, fascia is just this rubber band like stuff that holds organs in place. But there might be so much more to it. And there's fascia can actually allow piezoelectric energy to run through it. So chi, energy, piezoelectric energy, which, by the way, science is showing also influences our embryological development, which is how we grow and develop as living beings. So I'm no scientist, a lot of this starts to go over my head, but the reason I love this stuff is because, this isn't just a cool, quaint, pleasant concept. This is very real. So when I started meditating, I was finally working with my energy. Whereas with all the self-help stuff, I was just looping energy in my mind. And I was so sad and out of it that the looping just made it worse. It's like that joke about coffee. It's like, make bad decisions quicker and with more energy. But I actually love coffee. But when you loop energy in your mind, you're just the bad stuff is just going faster. So that's why I really think there's a big problem with a lot of self-help stuff out there, because it doesn't actually work with your energy and help resolve the emotional blockages that really were put in place through your energetic patterns, and they can only be released through working with your energy. So when I was going through all this stuff with sign spinning, with truck loading and all these challenges, losing business partners, it was because my energy was changing.
Mhm.
Now, bad, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes here, bad stuff happened, but it was more breakthrough stuff.
Mhm.
And I had enough presence of mind to understand that. And I would hope anyone else, as they go on their spiritual walk or do a meditative practice, realizes when your life goes through sometimes really shocking changes, it's because you're changing, and it's ultimately for your good, even if it's not comfortable, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, you have to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, because chi is life force. If you don't have that chi life force in your body, your organs don't work, you have no energy. Depression is what sucks life force, chi, prana, pranayama, whatever you want to call it, breath, life, air. Depression is what sucks that out of you. At the end of the day, when you start building your life force, your chi, your vitality, your strength, that's when you start moving forward. So now you have your chi, you're still doing the standing meditation, also known as the immortal post,
Yeah.
right? So you're doing all this, but then you've had these other revelations when it comes to your standing meditation. You notice that your shoulders were becoming lighter, your body was becoming lighter, you were dealing with things so much more easier, and you've had some surprise along the way, especially also with your mentor Mike, that showed up and sent you an email to apply for a job. We could go down that path too. I'm telling you, the book was amazing. I loved it.
Oh, thank
It gave
you.
me so many different things to talk about.
Yeah.
But you're gonna talk also about, you talked about the fragile and the anti-fragile.
Yeah. That's a concept that's really near and dear to my heart, because I'll how do I back into this? Here's how I'd put it. Throughout life, we might be hit with challenges, and these could be emotional challenges, like a friend betrays us, or really practical ones in the financial realm, like we lose a job. And if we're in like a really fragile position where, say, we lose a job and we don't have like a network of people that where we can ask around for a similar position or savings, or if a friend mistreats us, we turn around and blame ourselves and think, oh, I'm not worthy, there's something wrong with me. We walk through life very fragile, easily hurt.
Mhm.
um Now what's interesting is there's the different part of the spectrum, not the opposite end of the spectrum, I'll get to that in a moment, but a different part of the spectrum where we walk through life tough. We're guarded. People can't hurt our feelings because we're not in touch with our feelings, so they can't hurt us. And we're workaholics, we constantly work, so there's no need to worry about our careers, because there's always demand for us, because even if we neglect our children, or if our relationships are a complete mess, it doesn't matter because we work so hard. We're very tough. So there's a fascinating book called Anti-Fragile. The author's Nassim Taleb. And he lays out a really elegant concept where fragile and robust, he calls like toughness robust. He refers to as robust. They're not opposites. They're actually on a spectrum. And the actual opposite of being fragile is anti-fragile. So what does that mean? If you take a ceramic dish and you drop it, it'll shatter. It's fragile. Same with a person who has a really fragile emotional makeup. If one thing goes wrong, they will be out of it. They can't function. Um, Now, if you take a metal dish and you drop it, it won't break. It'll just bounce on the floor. So that's like a really like emotionally guarded person, a workaholic. They're tough.
Mhm.
But there's also the true opposite of fragile, which is anti-fragile, which is something that when it is stressed within certain parameters, it grows back stronger. It's actually enhanced. And a workaholic person who is out of touch with their emotions is not going to grow stronger from challenges. They're going to remain stuck in life. And everyone's different. Everyone has a different journey, but oftentimes that can look like having a heart attack at 50 and dying alone because they didn't have their emotional side together. And it's tragic, but that's probably what I was heading toward.
Mhm.
Um, so So there's there's the big picture concept, but okay, how does this apply to meditation? How do we harness this and to improve ourselves? Well, what I figured out was that um, when it comes to the Taoist approach to meditation, without using the word anti-fragile, what they're doing is they're practicing anti-fragility, because when they meditate, they will focus on relaxing their muscles. Like even if they're sitting or even if they're standing up, they will focus on relaxing their muscles, relaxing their muscles, relaxing their muscles. Now, you would think, oh, they might topple over, or they'll be really weak, but it's actually not the case, because they will sit or stand in a certain way where they will be supported by their bone structure. And anyone can practice this if you just in your chair, you position yourself in a way where your spine is really aligned and straight up. What you'll find is that you can relax and relax and relax your muscles, but as long as your weight is evenly distributed, you'll remain sitting upright. And what you'll also discover is that if you do want to quiet your mind, meditate, breathe deeply, relax, you'll be able to do so much, much easier, because your structural alignment actually assists you in your meditative practice. Um, so the way I like to say is, like, if someone's like really slouched and slumped over and like sleepy and just like, out of it, and they're like, oh, I'm relaxing from the TV, that's like my meditation. Nah,
Mm-hmm.
that's fragility, and you're not actually relaxed. You're just watching TV. Um, or some people, it's like, oh, I'm going to meditate. I mean, I'm going to quiet my mind. I'm going to focus really. Oh, if emotion comes up, I'm going to push it away.
Yeah.
That's trying to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But to be anti-fragile, to actually grow stronger from the challenges that hit you, is to be physically relaxed, but at the same time, maintain that focused awareness and that upright posture. And when emotions come up, you don't run away and you don't collapse. You face them, and you maintain your relaxation, because when you maintain your relaxation, now you're giving yourself a new imprint. And as a result, it won't be sometimes it's instant, but usually not. But you'll start the process of resolving that emotional pattern. um, so once you know the concept, you can start spotting it everywhere in life. You can start like, oh, am I anti-fragile here? Like in the investment world, am I anti-fragile? Will my investments do okay even if there's more stress in the sector where I'm invested in, or in the world? Am I anti-fragile in my career? And all kinds of stuff. Do I have enough self-esteem so that if I receive criticism, can I use it to build myself up better without collapsing and thinking I'm not worthy or hating myself? So I liked learning these concepts and training my brain to start noticing where they're at. So I can walk through life and really start to use everything as growth.
Mm-hmm. That's total self-awareness right there. When you start realizing that life is actually the classroom and it's your greatest teacher, you start bringing the sense of awareness deeper than any self-help book or any spiritual book or anyone could teach you, because really you're going through your own DNA codes, and those
Yeah.
patterns that we bring within our own self, that's our own code, that we are literally bringing that chi into our body. So that's just beautiful. So if you want to learn more about this, get Nate's book, The Standing Meditation. The link's going to be in the show notes below. Let's continue on to speak about the 4 pillars of Taoism. So your first is intention, then attention, imagination, and sensation.
Yeah, the 4 pillars of Taoist meditation. I really love these because when I first learned meditation, I didn't have really good experiences with it, because I didn't have much guidance other than sit quietly, observe your thoughts. And I'm really thrilled that meditation has really spread throughout our culture so much, because it's giving people a great new tool to lead better lives. And the more awareness about it, the better, I think, ultimately. But the trouble is, it's been watered down so much that I think a lot of the essence of it has been lost. So, with that said, I really like these 4 pillars because they're really great guidances for how you work with your mind when you want to meditate. So intention, what is your intention? um, you want to meditate. Why do you want to meditate? What is your outcome you want to achieve in meditation? Is it so you can process some old wounding, an old memory? Is it so you can achieve that, get closer and eventually achieve that no mind state where you're not like a big chatterbox all the time, inside your head? This intention helps because well, without an intention, we're not going to do something. And it also helps, gives you a direction for your focus and for your effort and for your contemplation and for your planning. um Attention. Attention is about where are you going to put your attention when you're, for instance, sitting and going through a meditation practice. A great place to put your attention is on your breathing. I love doing that, especially breathing deep into your belly. Other traditions teach, like, also you could put your attention on like your environments, like say if you hear a bird chirping in the background, which is great too. I always prefer paying attention to my breathing. And then I'll skip to sensations, because another thing you can pay attention to is sensations within your body. Do you feel warmth in parts of your body? Do you feel coolness or coldness, a buzz? Like when I first started, I started feeling this really pleasant sensation of just well-being. I describe it as a buzz, but it wasn't like zzz. It was more just like this, like a coffee buzz. It's like this very pleasant sensation. It's good to pay attention to that, because where you place your attention, you'll be able to perceive it more strongly and be able to, with more detail. And even if it's not a pleasant sensation, it could be good to put your attention on it, because you'll be able to start to figure out how to resolve that. Like if there's a tight muscle in your shoulder, it's not a judgment like, oh, I better pay attention to my stupid shoulder. No. It's just paying attention to it, objective attention. So then there's imagination. This is extremely powerful, because when you meditate, you can use your imagination to deepen your experience. So here are some very excellent practical ways that I use, even to this day. Tense muscles, tense shoulders, tense traps. You can use your imagination to imagine that your shoulders are like big ice blocks of ice. And then you imagine that the sun has just come out and it's beating down on these ice blocks, and they start to melt, and the ice turns into water. And then the water turns into steam, and then the steam starts to float away, like feet, yards away from you, and then just disappears. When you use an imagination practice like this, what you'll find is that your muscles actually start to relax. And it works a lot better, I found, than, relax.
Yeah.
So intention to what do I want? Attention, paying attention to what's going on in my body, and especially the sensations going on, because that's feedback your body's giving you. It's always valuable. And using your imagination in a healthy way to assist you in moving toward your intention. Those are the 4 pillars of Taoist meditation.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we have that intentional space within ourselves, and like how you said, that attention, and especially the sensational part. I find that when I was going through a difficult journey in my life, if I wasn't in tune with my body and trusted the doctors, boy, I would have been like just a test baby on that table half the time. So thank God I was listening to my body, because the more that we listen to our body, yes, our body does give us signs when things aren't going right.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah,
much
for
that I
sure.
could talk to. Can we talk about one more thing? Because this is something that's coming up. I know our time is coming to an end, but there's so many good things that you wrote in this book. Everyone needs to get it. The standing meditation, like I said, the link's going to be in the bio. There's a lot of wisdom, awareness, teachings, journey, Nate's story that's enveloped with wisdom, and how he changed his life. And not everything works for everyone, but really at the end of the day, if you take little bits and pieces of things and make it your own, create something that works for yourself. So I want to speak about tension, just because the day and age that we are living in today, there's a lot of tensions rising and we hold a lot of tension in our body. So let's talk about defining tension, how we could release that tension from ourselves.
Sure. Tension, when it comes to your physical body, comes down to your muscle tissue. And it's when your muscles are activated to do something, but they never quite finish. Actually a very tangible example would be if you get in a car accident and there's a reflex action where your hips and shoulders jut a certain way. And even after the accident's over, because the memory is still there and because there is still an energetic imprint, there might be some residual tension in your body. And it's your muscle consistently contracting in a way that doesn't serve your health, but your body is concerned with survival. And as far as it's concerned, you're either still in that accident or another one could be on its way. Another cause of tension would be emotional. And I actually think this is hugely prevalent, especially in chronic tension, that the roots are truly emotional. You, as a child, let's say, for instance, you get yelled at by your parent in a very unloving way, and you tense your shoulders up because you want to brace yourself against what might turn into a physical assault. If you don't process the emotional shock you received, which as children usually don't, the raised shoulders will follow you through life because part of your psyche is prepping for that attack, which is a really unfortunate form of self-sabotage, because not only are you just walking through life and you don't really need these tense shoulders, the tense shoulders actually will ultimately harm you, and actually prevent you from being able to work in a challenging situation, or even if someone does attack you. The best martial artists I know are actually incredibly physically relaxed people. They had to train that. And by the way, before I go on, tense muscles like that, that's being strong rather than anti-fragile. That's another example. You're literally using strength to protect yourself when anti-fragility would actually be super relaxed so that you can respond if appropriate. But anyway, so what else does tension cause? It causes chi to become blocked. Chi runs through your body. Tense muscles, if you want to experience the flow of energy, tense muscles will make that not happen real quick. Like there's actually no faster way. So tension's bad, right? So how do we get rid of it? One thing I already shared, which was the visualization of the ice melting. Another really important discipline to have is that when you do a meditative practice and memories start to pop up, and they could be very disjointed, random memories from years or even decades ago, or when emotions come up that are not necessarily intertwined with the conscious memory, you just suddenly start feeling really worried about something, and then you pick something to worry about, or you start feeling really angry for no particular reason. When this stuff comes up in a meditative state, what's going on is that you're actually finally able to process the stuff that used to be tripping you up. And what happens is, if you just sit and focus on breathing deep and focus on relaxing as much as you can physically with your muscles, it'll process, and you'll notice muscles start to release a little bit here and there. And it is a long process. And there's deeper and deeper layers, because what happens is, when we really experience deep chronic tension, our body becomes numb to it. And it's a coping mechanism, because if we walked through life truly feeling how tense we are, we would be so awkward and weirded out, we probably wouldn't be able to walk or drive a car. If that process keeps going, it results in pain. Like, that's when you start getting really bad joint pain or other kinds of chronic pain. It's not the only cause, but it's a major cause. So I say that because a lot of people might say, well, I'm not tense. Yes, you are. I've been there. Okay, I've been there. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm totally relaxed. You're totally relaxed as far as you can, as your attention can perceive these sensations. what will happen is as you continue, you'll hit a new level of tension, awareness of your tension, and suddenly be like, oh, I feel so awkward and tense. You're actually just reaching new levels. You're going deeper. And then you'll resolve that and be like, oh, okay, I'm 100%, relaxed now. And then you keep practicing and meditating, and suddenly you feel tense again because you just hit that new level of awareness. And it's a cycle, but as you keep going, you'll become more relaxed and the energy will flow more freely, which will allow you to process these old wounds and traumas better. And really, it becomes this virtuous cycle, and it becomes easier and you progress quicker, which is how a lot of these spiritual masters will talk about, well, it's possible to have an emotion come up and just be able to release it within a few heartbeats. The reason they can do that is because of their lack of tension and because they've slowed down their heartbeat. So they have a bit more time. But it really, releasing your muscular tension is one of the best ways to start entering that meditative state if you're kind of new to this sort of thing and just getting started. Because when you feel good and relaxed, it's much, much easier to meditate.
Yeah, amen to that. It sure is. It
Yeah.
sure is. So your tension could be a storehouse of your old emotions. It could be a storehouse of remembrance. It could be a storehouse of trauma, patterns, belief systems. I mean, there's tension that you could have in your shoulders. You could have it in your back. You could have tension all over your body. And yes, chi will not get into those areas. And if you don't have chi, that's when you have problems in there. Nate, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I could go on. Like I said, that's just minor stuff that I have written here. I really got into this book. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about. Like I said, it was such a great write. I loved your story. I loved how you persevered. I love how you came out at the end of it. Everyone, if you're interested in learning more about Nate's journey and what he did in the Daoist tradition to get him into a place where he is today, happily in love with his wife. Any kids yet, Nate?
No kids. We're just having fun.
Yeah, just having fun, catching up with the good old days.
Yeah.
So just go into the show notes below and you can get all of Nate's information there and where to purchase his book. Once again, thank you so much, Nate.
Oh, thank you, Zach. It was an honor to be here.
Such a pleasure. Thanks everyone for listening. Join us in the Empress Club on our private Facebook group. Also leave us a comment below. Share this podcast with everyone that needs to hear it, needs to move on to something greater themselves. Also join us on Instagram for any hot news and when our podcast will be released. Until we connect again, have yourself a great day. Bye for now.